What if I told you the entire climate debate was a magic trick, a grand diversion? That's the perspective we're unpacking today. A viewpoint that claims while our eyes are fixed on the invisible gas we all breathe out, we're completely missing a far more tangible and, frankly, a far more toxic invisible threat. All right, so here's our roadmap. We're going to start with the hidden health crisis that kicks this whole thing off. Then, we'll get into the so-called life gas deception. From there, we'll dig into the alleged agenda for control. And finally, look at the proposed solution, something called the Great Recalibration.
You know, the starting point for this whole argument isn't some dense scientific paper. It's a personal story. It's about a lifelong battle with a mysterious illness that led the source to believe the culprit wasn't genetics, it was something in the very air they were breathing.
I mean, just listen to that. This is where the whole investigation begins, not with abstract data, but with real, visceral human suffering. The source material grounds its entire case in this testimony, a lifelong fight with severe eczema and asthma that doctors just couldn't explain.
And this is where it gets really interesting. This timeline maps the health problems directly to specific environmental changes. The symptoms vanished when the home's heating system was changed. But then, when traffic was rerouted right past the house, they came roaring back. This wasn't a coincidence, it was a clue. It begged the question, what exactly was in the air?
So the investigation didn't point to the usual suspects. No, it landed on a very specific culprit, ultrafine nanoparticles. According to the source, these are tiny, toxic, and potentially radioactive particles coming from catalytic converters. They're so small, smaller than 100 nanometers, that they just bypass our body's natural defenses, getting straight into our bloodstream and even crossing the blood-brain barrier.
And this right here gets to the heart of the problem. All our regulations, all our focus is on these larger PM2.5 particles. This stuff you can see is smog. But this perspective claims the truly dangerous stuff, the invisible, unregulated nanoparticles, are just flying completely under the radar. It's like building a fishing net that can catch a whale, but lets a whole school of piranhas swim right through.
The implication here is, well, it's staggering. This viewpoint connects this invisible pollution directly to a terrifying list of modern diseases, from Alzheimer's and Parkinson's to cancer. It's presented not as just some minor factor, but as a potential primary cause of our chronic disease epidemic.
Okay, so this brings us to the big question, the one at the very center of the source material. If these nanoparticles are so incredibly dangerous, why is the entire multi-trillion-dollar global conversation obsessed with carbon dioxide?
The argument here is a total reframing. It's a complete 180. It claims that CO2 has been falsely painted as the villain, but in reality, it's the foundational gas for all plant life. No CO2, no plants. No plants, no oxygen. No us. They even have a name for it, Lebensgas, which is German for life gas.
And to back this up, the sources just point to Earth's own history. I mean, look at this. During times when the planet was a lush, green paradise just teeming with life, CO2 levels were as high as 8,000 parts per million. Today, we're sitting at around 420. The whole argument is that, from a historical standpoint, our current levels are actually incredibly low.
And here's the real kicker. According to this perspective, at 230 parts per million, right before the Industrial Revolution, we were actually getting dangerously close to the point where plants start to die off. They argue that the small increase in CO2 we've seen has literally made the planet greener, something they claim is even backed up by NASA satellite imagers.
So, if CO2 isn't the enemy and these nanoparticles are the real threat, then why the massive misdirection? Well, this leads us to the source's central and most provocative claim that the whole CO2 narrative was never actually about the climate. It was about creating a system of planetary control.
The argument really hinges on numbers, just like this one. The source claims a Dutch minister admitted that after spending hundreds of billions of euros on climate policy, the expected temperature change would be, get this, 0.00036 degrees Celsius, a number so small you can't even measure it. So you have to ask yourself, right, when the solution does virtually nothing to solve the stated problem, what is the real goal?
And that's the pivot point. The source material suggests we've been asking the completely wrong question. It's not about the science of warming, it's about the architecture of power. The sources lay out a pretty simple 3-step playbook. Step 1, make every human on Earth feel guilty for the simple act of breathing. Step 2, invent a new currency based on that guilt, things like carbon credits. And step 3, use that whole system to manage and control every single aspect of our lives.
This is the key. This is the whole magic trick, turning Laban's gas, the gas of life, into a Schul instrument, a debt instrument. The very substance that nourishes the planet is twisted into a weapon of financial control. The logic is simple. Because you exist, you produce carbon. Therefore, you are in debt, and you must pay for the right to exist. That is the core of the alleged deception.
So if that's the problem, how do you break the system? Well, the sources propose a direct counterattack, a fundamental reset of our entire civilization that they call the Great Recalibration. It's a brand new way of looking at value, and it's built on two core laws designed to dismantle that agenda of control.
First up is the Kampen Law. This is a law of structural recalibration. It basically says our current economic system is completely insane. It values abstract debt and imaginary growth over the actual tangible health of people and the planet. This law demands we flip that pyramid upside down and make biological health the foundation of all value, not just some afterthought.
And second, we have the Kukulkan law, which is named for the feathered serpent. This law says our technology, that's the serpent, has become a purely destructive force. I mean, pumping invisible poisons into the air is a pretty perfect example, right? Technology has to be integrated with wisdom and a higher purpose. It needs its feathers so that it serves life instead of destroying it from the inside out.
And this just lays it all out. It visualizes the total paradigm shift being called for here. It's about moving away from what they call a parasitic system, one that literally feeds on life to create abstract wealth, to a regenerative one, where the only currency that truly matters is the health and vitality of the entire ecosystem.
Now, this new way of thinking doesn't just look to the future, it also looks to the past. And that brings us to the final and most confrontational part of this whole argument, payback time.
This leads to a very direct demand, a total redirection of all of these resources. The argument is that the trillions of dollars spent on the abstract idea of carbon credits must be seized and repurposed for bioregeneration, to actually clean the air of the real poisons and to heal the biological damage done to all of us.
And this table just sums it up perfectly. It is a complete and total reversal of liability. The guilt is shifted from you, the breathing human being, back to the industrial complex that allegedly unleashed these unmonitored poisons. The debt is no longer abstract and financial, it's tangible and biological. It's a debt owed to life itself.
And we're going to end on this final thought. The source material argues that this entire system of control depends on one thing, keeping the real problem invisible. By shifting the spotlight from the life gas CO2 to the alleged synthetic poison of nanoparticles, the entire narrative just collapses. And when it does, so does the justification for control. The first step towards justice, it claims, is to simply see what has been hidden from us in plain sight.